Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about the social risk. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Link is in the description below. That sale is ending at the end of the month, so make sure you lock in the lower rate as long as you not cancel. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, we've talked about the social risk somewhat frequently on the channel over the last few months, but I wanted to provide an update on it. If you're not familiar with it, the social risk consists of 5 different social metrics. Those are new subscribers to cryptocurrency YouTube channels, views to cryptocurrency YouTube channels, new followers to cryptocurrency analysts on Twitter, new followers to exchanges on Twitter, and new followers to layer ones on Twitter. And the whole idea was, is there a way that we can figure out if people are coming into the space or if they are leaving the space? You know, a week or two ago, as you guys remember, right, there were so many calls for alt season, you know, and one of the things I said was, well, I mean, look, the social metrics don't really support that. I mean, it's not, it doesn't mean that, altcoins can't go up a little bit. I mean, that's just natural volatility. But the ideas of seeing alt season when people are actively leaving the space in any sustained manner at this point just seems like a very unlikely outcome. So that's what we said. And I mean, you can see that the altcoin market, total 3, was at just over 400 billion not too long ago, and now it's all the way back down to below 380 billion. So one of the things that I want to mention, though, before we get too far into this video, is this common question that I get is, well, should we not assume that there's an increasing base of people from one cycle to another? And we should, right? I mean, the idea is that cryptocurrency adoption is growing. And that's why we have sort of our Beauty of Mathematics video series where we assume that we're, on this logarithmic regression trend line. But from one cycle to another, despite the fact that people might leave, we should still have a higher base of people, right? So a lot of people come into the cryptoverse at the peak, they leave throughout the bear market and the recovery year, and some of the people stick around, right? Because they like what they see and they can look past the, at least the temporary drops in prices and look towards the future. So those people become the base, and then eventually we go into another bull market, and then we get another group of tourists, right, that come back once again. And then our base slowly builds. So you should know that the social risk does account for this. I mean, is it a perfect account of it? Probably not, right? We don't have a ton of data, but it does account for the idea that we would see increasing subscribers and increasing views over a longer period of time. If you think about it, right, like when I had this channel in 2019, it took me 6 months to get 500 subscribers, right? I mean, I know now I have a lot more, right? But back then it took me 6 months to go from 0 subscribers to 500 subscribers. So by the way, if you're starting a YouTube channel now and you're finding trouble getting traction, just keep at it, right? Keep at it. And I think eventually you will be happy that you did. It's hard during these phases, but the people that watch your channel, assuming you're providing, valuable content and whatnot, they'll appreciate that you do that even if you don't have a lot of subscribers, right? So today, or back then, it took me again 6 months to get about 500 subscribers. So do we assume that it's always going to take that amount of time, right? When you have a larger base, right? Like a lot of the crypto YouTubers do, right? No, you assume there's some element of increase over time. So I want people to know that it includes that. The social risk is one of the few metrics, in fact, that actually went to a pretty high risk level at the secondary peak. Now, since then, it's been in a fairly sustained downtrend, with the most recent low at about 0.164 risk occurring only about 12 days ago on April 13th. So even as recently as April 13th, the social risk is in fact putting in a new low, which is still suggesting that there are still people in general leaving the space. One of the things I've seen many times on crypto Twitter and on YouTube, and it's easy for me, to fall into this idea as well, but I've actively fight against it, is you see people, like leaving the space, right? So it's harder to get followers, harder to get subscribers, and some of them leave. And the first sort of knee jerk reaction that a lot of people might have is, well, something is not right, right? Like maybe the things aren't getting recommended as much. But the reality, right? Again, this is an inconvenient truth that we all have to be aware of, is that there are periods where people are more interested in risky assets and periods where they're not. And during a rate hiking cycle by the Fed, where also the money supply is negative and even going more negative, right? That's not exactly the environment that you would expect a ton of new people to come into the space to support rallies to new highs, right? If people are worried about getting laid off, they're likely not going to be as likely to go DCA into a cryptocurrency. So there's a cyclical behavior behind it, all right? We have to assume that, okay, there are phases where people are more interested and phases where people are less interested. Now, we're going to spend a little bit more time looking at this, but before we do, I actually want to go through each of these 5. So there's first, we have YouTube subscribers. So these are some crypto YouTube channels down here, including my own. So I'll be picking on myself, not anyone else. But if you look at all of us collectively, you can see that this is a bear market for social interest in the cryptoverse. Now, this is sort of excluding price. What's interesting is despite this rally, social interest has not gone up at all, barely. I mean, it's basically, we're collectively losing subscribers some weeks. So something to keep in mind. This is showing a 7-day moving average. If we just don't look at a moving average, this is what it looks like. Okay, so there are people unsubscribing, and new subscribers are almost few and far between. So if you apply a moving average to it, you get something that looks like this, and you will note how pretty well it shows where the bull market occurs. Another metric, by the way, that shows the more interesting time was back in early 2021, not late 2021. I would even suggest that had the Federal Reserve done what they should have done and raised interest rates in the summer of 2021, this rally may have never even happened, right? If the Fed had decided to take action, and maybe we would have had a rally, but perhaps it would not have gone to new highs. Maybe it would have just been a dead cat bounce at a slightly lower high, which is what we normally get. But the inaction of the Federal Reserve sort of allowed things to get hot and inflation to run hot, and we ended up getting a slightly new high. But ever since then, I mean, interest has really gone away. It's not that dissimilar, though, from what we saw in 2018 and 2019. I mean, look at this over here in late 2018 and 2019. I mean, there was very little interest. And when did interest pick up? When did it pick back up? In 2020, in the halving year, during more favorable monetary policy, which again is likely all going to come next year, right? More favorable monetary policy. Doesn't mean that traders aren't going to make money on some trades, right? I'm not trying to say that. It just means that we're still likely a ways from another phase like this. Another way to, and by the way, let's pick on myself here. So if you look at new subscribers to my channel, this is what it looks like. So you can see that it's pretty much dried up here in terms of new YouTube subscribers to my channel. So pretty insightful, right? I mean, I have no problem dunking on myself. This is a reality, and it just is what it is. And this is one of the reasons why I have trouble coming to terms with the idea of alt season and whatnot, right? Like the alt season that a lot of people remember was back over here, but back over there we were seeing a ton of new people come into the space, right? A ton of new people. Now, a common retort would be, well, should you, isn't it better to get into the market when the social risk is low? Yes, it is, right? I mean, I've been a big proponent of a DCA strategy is the best strategy over the long haul. I'm personally not getting into the altcoin market because I still expect it going to bleed to Bitcoin. Now, if I have that conviction, why would I get into the altcoin market, right? I wouldn't. So I don't, right? I just assume that the dominance is Bitcoin is going to go higher, and Bitcoin is going to sort of protect you from the deterioration of the altcoin market on their Bitcoin pairs, and also having some cash in hand to potentially get in on some potential moves to the downside, just like we saw last cycle as well, I think is a good strategy. But again, I mean, you can see there's not really a whole lot of new subscribers coming in, sort of calling into question, right? Who's the buyer to send these altcoins that much higher? Again, could they squeeze a little bit higher? Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. Are you going to see, 50x gains over the next 6 months? Very unlikely, right? Very unlikely. Which is, I think, is what a lot of people are sort of hoping for. Now, if you go over to YouTube views, you'll see a very similar thing, although it doesn't look quite as depressing. One of the things you'll note is that while collectively a lot of these channels are not getting new subscribers, there still is a large base of people that has stuck around, right? So thank you, right? Thank you for sticking around and watching me speculate dubiously throughout these years. I appreciate that, and it shows you how the base from one cycle to another goes up, right? So we're likely going to spend some time at a higher base before going up, and perhaps in 2 or 3 years when we look back, this might actually be a fairly small, like a small little peak that'll look like nothing compared to what comes later, right? I know some of you are like, well, there's no way Ben's talking bullish, right? I mean, there's no way Ben is even thinking about that. Look, I promise you it is possible for me to be bullish once again, but I still think we need to get beyond the macro headwinds that are currently facing us. And once we get beyond that, then I would get a lot more optimistic on the altcoin market. But at this phase, it's really hard to do that. You're not really seeing a lot of new people come in. So I suppose what's supporting prices currently are just the same people that have been here for the last year, right? Not really an influx of any new people. You can see YouTube views have been mostly somewhat steady. Now let's go pick on me, right? So my YouTube views, they've been going down. The spike here was sort of my shining moment, I guess, at least on that first peak, because we called for a summer low, right? Everyone was calling for 300K. And we said, look, guys are probably going to go down in the summer, right? As difficult as it is, we're probably going to go down in the summer. And we did. And when we did, we called for new highs and we got them, but not as high as I thought we were going to go, right? And that's, just being honest, right? Not as high as I thought we were going to go, not lasting as long as I thought it was going to. And really, it took me a couple months after that to really fully recognize that and appreciate that. And once I got to that point, back in January, February of 2022, I mostly just consolidated all my altcoin positions out to Bitcoin and to USD, and have just been sort of sitting out of the altcoin market for the most part ever since. So I do have, relics from, in some wallets and whatnot, but it's not something I've been that interested in quite some time. I do think I will find a renewed interest in it in Q3 or Q4 of this year in the altcoin market. But again, looking at my channel and looking at YouTube views, right, it's just in a systematic downtrend of lower highs and maybe lower lows. I mean, the last time it went really, really low was back in July of 2022. So it hasn't gotten quite that low yet, although it very well could go back to those levels. If we were to go over to Twitter followers, so this is Twitter followers to analysts, you'll see that this actually marked the secondary top. Right, so this is why and of course it's only obvious in hindsight, but this is why I'm saying, the social metrics can actually be insightful in finding out, are there new people coming in or is it dying off relatively quickly? And you can see that this basically died off incredibly quickly after that move, and was very, came down to much lower levels even by March of 2022. I mean, this peak had completely died out. And ever since then, it's been at pretty low activity. Ever since, it's a 7-day moving average. If you look at just in general, that's what it looks like. And you can see there's periods where there's some people unfollowing, and it could be bots, but it just does show you that social activity is fairly low. Now let's go over to Twitter followers to various cryptocurrency exchanges, and if you do that, you get something that looks like this. You can see, again, it's in more or less a downtrend, right? It's not showing any sustained strength. Yes, there are some followers to some of these exchanges, but some new followers, but it's not nearly what it used to be, right? Collectively, some of these exchanges were getting 60,000. I mean, if we just go look at just a raw number on some of these days, right? 60,000 new followers in a day was pretty normal. 40, 50, 60,000. Now it's a lot lower, right? Like 10, 15, 20,000. So it's a lot lower today than it was back then. And then finally, let's look at new followers to layer ones. This is what it looks like, right? Nothing too exciting. I mean, just a series of lower highs. And so it really does continue to make me somewhat skeptical of the altcoin market. And what I'm looking for is for some of this stuff to bottom out. Because once it looks like it's bottomed out, then you could argue that, all right, whoever was going to leave has, and the altcoin market, the altcoin reckoning might be over. Remember, plenty of altcoins went to new lows in 2019 and 2020. Plenty of them. A lot of them went to new lows in 2019 and 2020, even though Bitcoin didn't. Even though Bitcoin's bottom was in December 2018, a lot of altcoins eventually put in new lows because I think altcoin liquidity, when it dries up in the pre-halving years and the early part of the halving years, it doesn't take much to send them down, right? Because they're just so low. There's not a whole lot of liquidity. And if there's a rush to the exits, they can go down incredibly quickly. So what I'm looking for is for these things to ultimately bottom out. So how do we look for that, right? So if you go back over to the historical risk, we can actually show all of these risk metrics, right? So this is all of them. Let me hide them all. So this is the YouTube subs risk, pretty low. YouTube views risk is still pretty high, although it's in the process of going down right now. Twitter analysts is pretty low. Twitter followers to exchanges is pretty low, but still in a somewhat sustained downtrend. And here you have layer ones, right? It's somewhat low, but still putting in lower highs for quite a while now. Now, if you normalize, so these are all normalized between 0 and 1, and then if you combine them all together, you get the social risk metric, which looks something like this. And the current social risk is now 0.227. And again, it put in a new low as recently as about 12 days ago on April 13th. I'm actually making this video on April 25th, but by the time it goes live on my channel, it'll be April 26th, more than likely. But so 12 or 13 days ago is essentially where the social risk put in a new low, and I would argue that it's likely going to put in new lows as we continue to sort of push forward into the summertime. I would expect it, and maybe by the end of the summer, sometime in Q3 or something, we'll see the social risk get down to some of these lower risk bands, like that 0 to 0.1 risk band would be somewhat ideal. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about the social risk. I know it's not for everyone, but it does give some insight into the markets that you're not really going to find on a price chart or an on-chain chart or in derivatives data, liquidation data, that sort of stuff. It shows you who's here. It shows you, are new people coming in? Are they leaving? Does it support the idea of alt season or does it not? If people are coming in quickly, it normally supports the dominance going lower. If people are leaving quickly, it would normally support the dominance going higher, which is just, again, another tailwind, in my opinion, for Bitcoin's dominance to continue higher, to see the continued deterioration of altcoins on their Bitcoin pairs and also likely their USD pairs as well, and to just sort of be patient, wait for the social risk to find some type of a bottom. And at that point, we could finally see some of these altcoins putting in bottoms on their Bitcoin pairs. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Again, check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Link is in the description below. That sale is going to end at the end of the month. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.